Hey third graders, welcome to Module 2, Lesson 20. Today we're going to estimate differences by rounding and apply to solve measurement word problems. Remember, differences means that we're doing subtraction. Estimating means that we're going to be rounding our numbers first before we find our exact answer. Today when you round, the thought process that I want you to go through is to first think to yourself, should I round to the nearest 10 or 100? We'll talk about that in the video as we go. And then after you're estimating, I want you to think, is my estimate reasonable or does it make sense? So when you picked your tens or your hundreds, did it make sense to round to that? When you find the exact answer today, we're going to decide how your estimating went. Eventually, this will become very natural to you and you won't have to think about it so much, but when you're first learning it, you do have to think about it. Our first problem today is 362 take away 189. Please write this down. Write down your place value chart, press pause, and then press play when you're done. After you're done writing that down, I would like you guys to rewrite it again. And I kind of showed you some of the answers, but no problem. All right, so I want you guys to write this again underneath your notes, and we're going to estimate first. So we're going to write it 362 minus 189. So first you should think to yourself, should I round to the nearest 10 or 100? Let's think about what our choices are, and then we'll make a decision. So if I rounded 362 to the nearest 10, it would come between 360 and 370. So that would make 362 close to 360. Okay, so there's my first choice. My second choice is to round to the nearest 100 for 362. So in this case, 362 would be closer to 400 because it would be between 300, 400, 350 is our midpoint, 362 is above our midpoint, so we would round to 400. Okay, so for me, when I'm looking at this, I'm already thinking, what would be most reasonable? So 362 is pretty close to 360, so that seems like it might be the most reasonable. 362 is pretty far away from 400, so let's see how it would interact with my other number that I'm using. My other number is 189. So 189, if I round to the nearest 10, is closest to 190. It's only one away, so it's pretty close. If I round 189 to the nearest 100 between 100 and 200, it's closer to 200. It's actually pretty close as well. It's 11 away this time instead of 1 away, but let's see what would happen if we use these different estimates. So if I took my rounding to the nearest tens, 360 take away 190. Go ahead and solve this on your notes right now. Press pause and press play when you're done. All right, so when we're estimating, usually we want to set up a problem for ourselves where we don't have to borrow, because when we estimate, we want things to be pretty easy to do in our head. So usually when we estimate, we don't want to have a problem where we're going to have to borrow, because usually we want to be able to do estimates in our head. But let's go ahead and see how this works out. So 0 take away 0 is 0. 6 take away 9, can't do it. So we have to borrow from the hundreds. So now we have 16 ones take away 9 ones, which would be 7. So we have 7 tens, and 2 hundreds take away 100s is 100. So this answer would be 170. Let's take a look at if we had rounded to the nearest 100 and done 400 take away 200. Okay, so I can do this one in my head pretty easily. There's no borrowing, but my answer is 200. Now, sometimes you can do a combination of rounding to the nearest 10 and rounding to the nearest 100. So go ahead and write down 360 take away 200. when we rounded this to the nearest 10 and that to the nearest 100 and see what you get. Press pause and press play when you're done. All right, you should have gotten 160. So if we look at all of these answers, they're all pretty close together. So let's see what our exact answer is to see which one would have been the most reasonable. If you haven't already solved this for the exact answer, do it right now. Press pause and then press play. You should have solved it by noticing that we need to borrow twice. So I can see that before I even start subtracting. So I'm going to need to borrow from my tens, and that makes 12 ones. I'm having to get kind of funky because I'm holding my daughter in one hand and doing this in the other. All right, so 12 ones take away 9 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ones are left. 5 tens take away 8 tens. We can't do it. So we've got to borrow again, and this becomes 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now I'm going to take away 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 6, 7 left over. And then finally, 2 take away 100 is 100 left over. So 175 is my exact answer. Let's compare. So it looks like my 200 when I rounded to the nearest 100 was pretty far away, but these two both looked like they're reasonable. My combination of my rounding to the hundreds and the tens, and then my rounding to the tens also came up with a reasonable answer. However, when we estimate, we want to be able to do the problem in our head. So I think that this one would have gotten us the most reasonable answer, and we could do it in our heads. Let's try another one. Our next problem, we have 349 take away 154. This time we're going to estimate first because usually that's what we do when we encounter a math problem anyway. So I want you to think to yourself, should you round to the nearest 10 or 100? I want you to estimate on your paper right now. And then after you estimate, think about, was your answer reasonable? Estimate, press pause, and then press play when you're done. Now that you've estimated, let's go ahead and look at how some of your reasoning could have been. When we're trying to estimate 349, if you round to the nearest 10, it would have been between 340, 350. It would have rounded 1 up to 350. If you had rounded to the nearest 100, it would have rounded to 300 because it was 1 below the midpoint. Let's look at our nearest 100. So here, this is another number that's close to the midpoint when we round to the nearest 100. So we have 154 would round to 200, but 154, if we rounded to the nearest 10, would round to 150. So I can see that there's a lot of distance in between these two numbers, and there's a lot of distance in between these two numbers. But maybe if I picked like one of each, they might balance out. So let's see some different possibilities. If we had rounded to the nearest 100, we would have rounded 300 minus 200 is 100. That's a really nice estimate because we could do it in our heads. 350 minus 150 is another great estimate because I could also do this in my head. So I would get 200. But wow, look at those two estimates are very far apart. Let's see which one is the most reasonable. Go ahead and solve for the exact answer on your notes. Press pause and then press play when you're done. All right, here's what you should have gotten. 9 take away 4. I didn't have to borrow, I have enough to destroy. 9 take away 4 is 5. 4 take away 5, I can't do it, I don't have enough. So I need to borrow from my hundreds to give more to my tens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I was able to do that because I unbundled or decomposed one of my hundreds into 10 tens. So now I can do 14 take away 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that leaves me with 9 tens. 2 hundreds take away 100 is 100. So my exact answer is 195. So my most reasonable estimate was when I rounded to the nearest 10. Let's take a look at why. So remember when we said when we rounded to the nearest 100, those numbers were really far apart. So if this number is far apart and this number is far apart, then I'm probably not going to get something close to my exact answer when I estimate. But with my tens, they were pretty close to where my number actually was. So here it was only 4 away, here it's only 1 away, so that probably means that my answer will get a lot closer. Let's do one more practice problem before the final problem. Estimate 349 minus 149, and then find the difference again, but then the exact answer. See if your answer was reasonable when you estimated, and then don't forget to use your place value chart to check your work. Press play when you're done. All right, if I was going to estimate this problem, I realized that both of these numbers are 1 away from the midpoint. So if I rounded to the nearest 100, I would be rounding down. So this one would round to 300, this one would round to 100, and that would be a huge difference between my estimate and my exact answer. So I'm going to round to the nearest 10 here. So my nearest 10 would be 350, take away 150, which would equal 200. My exact answer would be 349, 9 take away 9 is 0, 4 take away 4 is 0, 3 take away 1 is 2. Wow, my estimate exactly matched my exact answer. That doesn't happen very often, but it's exciting when it does because that means that you've done something right. Here's your final problem. Please estimate 496 minus 209. Find the exact answer and solve it also on your place value chart. I also want you to write about if your estimate was a reasonable answer, and you can do that by writing a sentence below your problem somewhere that says, my answer is reasonable because. All right, you guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Good luck tonight. This is our last lesson of the module, so then we're going to be just doing some test review in class and at home. All right, see you guys tomorrow.